Today, we're going to see how you can send data from Tally Forms, which is a great form builder, to any product, tool, or database of your choice using BuildShip, which is a visual API and workflow builder. You can connect to any database like Supabase, Airtable, or even send data to Notion, Slack, and any other tool you would like. Step by step, build your logic, one-click ship, plug in this instant API that you get back in Tally under integration with a webhook, and start seeing your data populating in Supabase or even BuildShip's own database table. Let's dive in to learn how to build this in just a few minutes. First, you create a form on Tally. They have lots of templates. Here, I am using a lead generation template with a collection of name, email, company information. Once you create this form, you need to integrate it into BuildShip. So let's go to the settings, and under the integration section, you need to connect webhooks. Here, you need to give an endpoint URL, which will be the destination where your form submissions will go. Here is where BuildShip comes in. BuildShip is an instant API builder that lets you create visually step-by-step any logic you want when an API is triggered. Once you build your logic, you can ship it in one click to get an endpoint URL that you can use on Tally. So let's see how you can do this from scratch. We have added a handy Tally template for you. So on BuildShip, go ahead and click the template section and click this Tally form submission. Here you'll be given a base template of a Tally workflow. Here I already have a workflow called Tally form. That's why it's complaining. So let me go ahead and change this to Tally form submission. So what happens here is that every time an API call is done, it sends the data to the next step. In this next step, we have create document, which is storing the data to BuildShip's Firestore collection. If you're not familiar with Firestore, if you don't want to save the data to Firestore, you can save it to any database or tool of your choice. For example, you can send the data to Airtable, you can send the data to Supabase, or even send it to Notion to create a page. So for the purpose of this demo, we'll be using the BuildShip table, which is a built-in lightweight Airtable-like table that comes with every BuildShip project. So what this node does is create a document on that table. You can name the tables to be something else. In the base template, it says Tally submission. Let me change it to lead generation. And now here in the data, whatever is in the incoming request is being passed here. You can also change it, for example, if I go and edit this, if you don't want a specific request entirely to be stored in the database, you can go to specific thing. So for example, if I want to store only the request body, I can do that. Now we'll see what the body contains, all that when we start testing this. And finally, once you have saved the data to database, you just want to return a successful message back to Tally so that it knows everything is done and it's not an error. So here we have the OK 200, which denotes that the API was successfully completed. Now we won't be changing any of these now. You can if you would like. But for the purpose of testing, let me go and ship this. As you can see, it came back with an API URL. And all that you need to do is copy this endpoint URL, go back to Tally and paste it here. Once you do that and click connect, you'll be shown this section which says, hey, this integration is active and live. Now, obviously, you want to test it to make sure this integration works end to end. And the way to do it is you can go and look at the event logs. Since there's no events sent yet, it's empty. But you can send a test event, or you can fill the form to send some data and see how that shows up on your BuildShip site. So let me go ahead and click Send Test Event. Okay, so it sent some sample message. So let me expand it and see how it looks like. As you can see, it's a big JSON with all the fields like input name and the last name and the company information and whatnot. So if I go back to BuildShip, under the logs, I'll be able to also see what has come in. So let's see, there is a successful submission that has come in, and you can see what actually happened in the request. So as you can see here, it first created the document and it returned the value. So how do you see this data? Where has it gotten stored? How do I see it? If you had stored this in an Airtable, you obviously can go to Airtable directly and see that. But since we have stored it in BuildShip's database table, you can click this button to go ahead and see that table. Now, I have not created any table. I just added this node. That means I need to go and set up this table first. So let me go to the database section here, and you'll see all the tables that were previously set up by me. If you are seeing this project for the first time, this will be completely empty. And at the very bottom, you'll see existing Firestore collections. These are all like the tables that got created in your database but never got set up. As you can see, the lead generation collection is available here. Now you click Setup and simply Create. And you can import existing data because you have already sent one form submission that will be here. So you don't need to add column one by one. You already have some sample data. So let's go ahead and click Import. And let's select all the columns. So created at data and event ID. Let's continue. And you will see the column types and the column names. You can adjust them if you would like. And then you'll also see a sample data for each. So let's go ahead and click Finish Setup. Now, if you look at this data, you can actually open and expand this to look at it further. You can see that the fields are getting stored in a big JSON format like this, similar to how Tally sends the data, a big blob of JSON. Now, you don't want this exact data to be stored. You want it to be spread out in a nice spreadsheet that you can easily read and share it with your team members. So to do that, what you need to do is add individual columns that spread this information out. So for example, you can say first name, and what you need to do is data.fields 0 and value. Okay, so before you get lost, let me tell you what this means. Let me store this first as a short text and click add and tell you exactly what data fields value is doing. So if I click add, you can see the value example because data.fields 0 value is nothing but example, which is the first name. Similarly, you can do data fields 1 value, which is the last name, 2 the email, 3 the job title, etc. Let me do a really fast speed run of this to fill all these columns. So you have the first name, last name, email, company's name, job title, etc. Now, this is great, but this was quite tedious, wasn't it? So you can do it one time and set this up, and then every form information will start coming through, and that's it. You don't need to do this ever again. This is the first time setup pains. You can also delete all the information that you don't need. For example, I delete this column, which is just a big JSON. You can keep it if you want. You can hide it away. You can delete it itself if you would like. So let me delete all these things, and there you go. It's fully set up and ready to share. So if I go back to the Tally and rerun this information again and come back to my table, there you go. You see this. So every time a form submission comes, you get this data in a spreadsheet UI, which is similar to Airtable, very lightweight to use. But now what if you don't want to use this built-in BuildShip database? If you want to use, say, for example, Supabase, it's super easy to do. You come back here to your workflow. Let's hide this away. And let me change this to be a Supabase table. So let me do Supabase and create row. And you want to fill your API key, API URL. You can get all that information in this nifty information panel. You have this full tutorial that you can read on how to do this. Now, I already have these set up in my environment variable, so I'm just going to pick those up. I'm going to pick my Supabase key and API URL. And once I do, I can select the table. So if I go back to my Supabase project, I have set up a table called lead generation. So let me add this table as a table name on BuildShip. And the object that I want to save is actually the individual responses from the body. Now, if I want to understand how this works, you can actually go here and understand each fields. For example, you need to map like this. And so similarly, I will just go ahead and map individual fields. So let me say first name, and I need to map it to a field. Similarly, the last name, and I need to map it to a field. So this mapping that I was doing earlier in the table UI, I need to do the same here. So I go to the request body dot fields 0 and value. Similarly, for the last name, it will be 1. Okay, so let me test this out. I can actually go to the logs and retest a previous value here. So let me click test. And what you can see here is that it copied all the values into my body here. And as you can see in the body, in data and fields, I have this information. So actually, I need to adjust this slightly. It's not body and fields directly. It's body.data.field. And if you're not too sure how to do this mapping, one interesting thing you can do is copy this entire JSON blob, come to this section, which is an AI-assisted value filler for each of your fields, and node then expression. So in the specific field, you want the value to be mapped from this JSON to this individual first name and last name. So you can actually tell that in prompt, give this example, and it will fill this for you. So there's another option to do it if you're not familiar how to do this in low code. Okay, so now that I have done the mapping, let me test this out. Let me click test workflow, and you can see what happens. It basically runs every node. So it's running this node, then it's running this node. And if you don't want to save this to BuildShip database anymore, you can simply go here and delete it. So let's see what happened actually. So there is an error here. New row violates row level security policy of lead generation. As you can see here, there's a row level security policy on that table. So you can actually go adjust it and create policies, etc. Right? For the purpose of this demo, let me turn off this row level security. And then go back to BuildShip and test this workflow again. There you go. The response is that it's created. And if I go to Supabase, I can see that it has come through. Now I've added the first name, last name. Let me also go ahead and add the email. So for that, I'll go and edit this object, and I will just add one more entry here, incoming from my tally form saying email, and it's the second entry. And so if I test this again, as you can see, the second entry is the email. It ran successfully. And if I go here, it created another entry with the email. So there you go. You're able to go from a simple form on Tally to the data getting stored on Supabase for each submission, and flexibly change the logic however you like. Maybe you want to also write things in parallel. For example, you can write into Supabase as well as BuildShip table, maybe even write the Notion, Slack, etc. in parallel. So you can do that here. This is not a black box. Everything you see here, you can look at the code, tweak it, logic if you would like in JavaScript, and ship it. So everything here is editable, tweakable. You can change this any way you like and flexibly ship in one click. Hope you enjoyed this. If you'd like to see any more videos in this style, let us know in the comments what you want us to see build next. Thank you.